Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Who, a writer asked, is going to give mankind a single system of evaluation for evil deeds and for good ones, for unbearable things and for tolerable ones? Who could impress upon a sluggish and obstinate human being someone else's far-off sorrows or joys? Who could give him an insight into magnitudes of events and into delusions which he has never himself experienced? Fortunately, there does exist a means to this end in the world. It's art, it is literature. It would surely have been difficult to imagine during our 18 Cold War years in America that such a diverse array of new Russian writers would be represented here in New York City in a major push by America to read and so to understand Russia. However, today I will speak to you about an author who, even in those years, hardly lacked for attention across the West, and with whose dramatic and timeless words I opened my remarks. My late husband, Alexander Solzhenitsyn. While most of you are well familiar with his novels, stories, and essays, little is publicly known about his archive. Today, I hope to help fill that gap. Alexander Solzhenitsyn archive is immense. It consists of 3 unequal parts. A small number of manuscripts and letters is found in the Russian State Archive of Literature and Art, RGALI, in Moscow. An even smaller part is in St. Petersburg, at the Pushkin House, Academy of Sciences, Institute of Russian Literature. These documents ended up in state archives prior to Solzhenitsyn's return to Russia in 1994. The major, colossal part of the writer's archive is held by our family. Per Solzhenitsyn's will, I and our son Stefan are its authorized keepers. We began systematic structuring and description of the archive 2 years after Alexander Isayevich died, which means about 2 years ago. At the same time, the archive is being scanned and transferred into digital form. But there is much work still to be done. So far, 1.5 people are working on it. The curator, Galina Tyrina, and I, but I dedicate less than half of my time. My priority task is to complete the publication of Solzhenitsyn's 30-volume collected works in accordance with the plan that he and I put together. The collected works will include all his finished writings in their final editions. 16 volumes have been published so far. One of the remaining 14, at least 3, are comprised of previously unpublished works. The twists and turns of Solzhenitsyn's biography are well known. War, prison, camps and internal exile, life as a rural teacher, writing in secret, publication of One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich in 1962, an overnight fame, but almost immediately thereafter, a wall of abstraction to his subsequent books. Open dissent and butting heads with the authorities, the KGB's hunt for his manuscript, the bombshell publication of the Gulag Archipelago, and exile from the USSR. A short life in Europe and a long one in America, in Vermont Hills. The return to Russia in the 1990s. With such upheaval, losses of some of the archive are inevitable and not surprising. What is surprising is how much of the archive remain intact. And I propose to give you a very brief overview, a little show and tell, if you will. with the advent of the personal computer, the tools of the trade change for writers, composers, or even just ordinary people writing letters. The pen becomes an anachronism. Alexander Solzhenitsyn is perhaps one of the last writers to leave a manuscript archive, and a huge one at that. All his works, beginning with childhood creations in school notebooks and ending with notes he made on the day he died, were written by hand. There were just a few exceptions, some editorial writings in his later years, as well as correspondence with people who were not acquaintances. At opposite to close friends, he always wrote longhand. Manuscripts of literary works. The archive contains both published and unpublished manuscripts. For example, more than a dozen notepads and notebooks with attempts at writing from Solzhenitsyn's childhood and adolescence, which he later marked as unfit to print ever. Here are adventure stories written when he was 8 or 9. Here is a magazine where the boy served as author of every single section, editor, and manager of subscriptions. Plays. The poem Évariste Galois. Written as a freshman at the Physics and Mathematics faculty of Rostov University. An early draft of the novella Love the Revolution, written at the Sharashka, a prison for scientists and technical specialists, described in the first circle. Solzhenitsyn had to write on the back of German paper, expropriated at the end of the war, which he cut into 4 pieces. An early draft of the chapters from August 1914 that describes his family, same location, 1948. A manuscript of Cancer Ward with annotation, not the final version. A lot of changes have been made on the typewritten version, which is now the main manuscript. Here is a priceless manuscript of the Gulag archipelago, which was saved by friends and lay buried in the ground for 20 years, then was given back to the author when he returned to Russia in 1994. This manuscript is one of the main, if not the main, treasure of the archive. And here are those friends, Estonians, at whose secluded homestead Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote the Gulag archipelago, while their children then saved the manuscript. Here is the manuscript of November 1916, that is the second note of the Red Wheel. All of the drafts and all editions of the Red Wheel are saved in the archive. And here, something wrong. And here is a unique item. It is one of 2 thick notebooks in which Solzhenitsyn for 25 years made entries into the diary of the Red Wheel, writing down his plans, successes, failures, both his creative agony and his joy. It has not been published anywhere yet. Currently, I am preparing the diary for print as part of the collected works. Now, in the archive are several examples of the author's own typed drafts. In his years of underground writing, as soon as he was able to obtain a typewriter, which in USSR of the 1950s wasn't easy, he would type his own manuscript and then burn the old ones to reduce the risk. Such a typescript then became the original. In producing it, knowing it had to be hidden, he reduced the volume by typing with minimal margins and line spacing. Here you can see his typescript of the novel in the first circle. This is version 3, the earliest of those that exist. The first two, handwritten versions, the author burned. No less important in the archive are the typescripts not made by the author, but with his copious edits. That is, intermediate editions that are of special interest to scholars. Here is a page from the story Times of Crisis, full of edits by the author. And here is a page from the Red Wheel, next to last edition. The typing is mine, but in the margins is his and my torrent of correspondence, with the pluses meaning he accepted my comments and the minuses that he declined them. There are thousands and thousands of such pages.